It's not frustrating. It's expected. Somebody's got to take the blame. I'll be that guy. I'm okay with it. I'm fine. Everybody is entitled to their opinion. But with that being said, my phone's in my back pocket right now. If whoever has anything to say to me, feel free. 773-899-6071. So if you want to interview, there you have it.
Oh shoot, let me talk to Jimmy. Hold on. 773-899-6071. Yo, what's up guys? It's me, Zach Lee. I don't believe it. Yo, there's no way this actually happened. Because if this did, then you Clippers fans should be upset with Steve Ballmer too. Alright, so not too long after the Chris Paul trade went down, after Chris Paul was traded to the Houston Rockets, these reports started coming out of nowhere saying that Chris Paul was supposedly unhappy with Doc Rivers, which is why he wanted to be traded to Houston or was just gonna leave in free agency for nothing. And apparently the reason for this is because Doc Rivers refused to trade his son in Austin Rivers. These reports claim that the Knicks had offered a trade for Carmelo Anthony to the Clippers for a package around Doc Rivers' son, Austin Rivers, but Doc Rivers didn't want to trade his son, so he rejected the trade, therefore putting his son before the betterment of the team, in which Chris Paul was not cool with that. And I mean, I can't blame him. If that was me and Doc Rivers like, you know what, I'm not gonna trade my son for a chance to win a championship, I'd be like, you know what, Doc? You right, keep your son. Matter of fact, give him all the minutes you want, cause I'm out of here. I would have done the same thing as Chris Paul. However, since then, both Doc and Austin Rivers have come out and said that this story is not true whatsoever, which you could expect them to say. I kind of believe them, not because they said it, because like I said, of course they're gonna say this isn't true. What is Doc Rivers gonna say? Yeah, I didn't trade my son because I don't want to trade him. He want to get playing time under any other coach. He's not gonna say that. The reason I believe Doc Rivers though is because he still has a job. I don't care what kind of owner you are. The bottom line for all these owners is how much money they are making. For the most part, a bunch of them don't necessarily care about how the team is doing as long as their pockets are being filled. If a chance to make more money comes along, and the person they put in charge of handling the basketball operations, the president of basketball operations and the GM, turned down that offer because they don't want to trade their son, you best to believe that person is getting fired every single time he does that, and twice on a Monday. If the Clippers had a legit chance to get Carmelo Anthony for Doc Rivers' son in Austin Rivers, and Doc Rivers turned down the deal, do you know how much money he just cost Steve Ballmer? Carmelo Anthony would have spiked ticket sales, he would have spiked jersey sales, all merchandise sales, everything would have rose because everyone wanted to go see Carmelo Anthony play for the Clippers. No one goes to see freaking Austin Rivers play for the Clippers. So if Steve Ballmer got word that Doc Rivers rejected a trade offer like that, Doc Rivers is gone. And that's why I believe that this story isn't at least 100% true. I told y'all the Houston Rockets trading for Chris Paul wasn't the only thing they had up their sleeve. I told y'all that that was just phase 1 of Operation Compete with Golden State. I'm just mad that I didn't wait like another 10 minutes to make yesterday's video, because if I did, I would have been able to talk about this in yesterday's video as well. But it's whatever, at least I can talk about it now. According to reports once again, the Houston Rockets are now aggressively pursuing both Paul George and kind of Carmelo Anthony, but we'll touch on that in a second. First off, Paul George. Paul George had been linked to the Rockets before they even traded for Chris Paul. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I gave them about the same chance of getting Paul George. I gave them about the same chance of getting Chris Paul before they got Chris Paul. When they got Chris Paul, it was a huge surprise to me because I didn't actually think they were gonna get Chris Paul. I feel the same way about Paul George just because I don't think they had what it takes to get Paul George. But once again, I didn't think they had what it took to get Chris Paul, so I'm not gonna put it out the realm of possibility like I did them getting Chris Paul. If Paul George does end up getting traded to Houston, a third team will be needed to facilitate a deal. The Indiana Pacers rejected the Cleveland Cavaliers when they offered Kevin Love for Paul George. Taking a look at the Houston Rockets, all they have to trade now is basically Ryan Anderson if they want the contracts to match up. The Indiana Pacers rejected Kevin Love. You honestly think they would say yes to a trade offer of Ryan Anderson? Come on now, don't be crazy. So if there was some type of Paul George to Houston thing to go down, a third team would be necessary to facilitate a deal. And there is no question that if Paul George did it up in Houston, he would be a huge upgrade over Trevor Ariza. Look, Trevor Ariza is a pretty solid defender, and he's also an excellent three-point shooter, but Paul George does so much more and would only make that team so much better. That leads us to Carmelo Anthony. And before I say anything about Anthony, let me just say that if the Houston Rockets were to get Carmelo Anthony, things would be kind of interesting between him and Mike D'Antoni. In case you guys forgot, D'Antoni used to be the coach of the New York Knicks back in 2012-2013. The Knicks were actually balling back then. Carmelo Anthony was playing great. It was the last time the Knicks were a pretty good team. I think they finished with a record of like 54-28 or something like that. And then after that season though, Mike D'Antoni quit and later revealed it was because of Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony basically forced Mike D'Antoni out of New York. So if Carmelo were to come to Houston, the two of them would have to kind of sit down and clear the air. But this is also good news because Mike D'Antoni has proven that he can win with a team that involves Carmelo Anthony. Put him on this team, which will be a much better team than the New York Knicks were back then, and great things could come out of that. That being said, I honestly think that the Houston Rockets going after Carmelo Anthony could be better overall than going after Paul George. And hear me out, not saying that Carmelo Anthony at this point of his career is a better player than Paul George. Player-wise, I'm going with Paul George over Carmelo Anthony at this point of his career. But take a listen to this. You get Paul George, right? You trade Ryan Anderson for Paul George. You're basically done making moves for the rest of the summer because you can't afford to do anything else. All you can do now is sign players to veterans minimums, and on top of that, you have a gaping hole at your power forward position. So that will be a huge problem for them going forward. The thing with Carmelo though, they most likely won't have to trade for Carmelo Anthony. Carmelo Anthony could very well get bought out by the New York Knicks. A report came out yesterday saying that even though Phil Jackson isn't the man in charge for the Knicks anymore, their agenda with Carmelo remains the same. They are still looking to trade Carmelo. They would still prefer to trade Carmelo over just releasing him, basically, you know, buying him out, which of course, why wouldn't they? The thing is though, is that not too many teams are interested in trading for Carmelo Anthony. Before Chris Paul wound up in Houston, the Clippers were seen as the most likely destination for him to be traded to. Now, I think that's off the table since I don't even think Carmelo wants to go there anymore, and he controls his own fate since he has a no trade clause. The whole reason he wanted to go to the Clippers was to play with Chris Paul, and Chris Paul is now in Houston. Other than that, the Celtics were mentioned, they're not interested. The Cleveland Cavaliers were mentioned, and I don't think that's gonna happen because they're worried about LeBron leaving in free agency, so they're not gonna trade for Carmelo if LeBron could just leave. And on top of that, they'd have to trade Love. And does trading Love for Carmelo really put you over Golden State? I mean, come on now, no it doesn't. So the Knicks most likely won't be able to move Melo, which means they will have to buy him out. And according to Carmelo Anthony's camp, that's what they are pushing for. They're pushing for a buyout of Carmelo Anthony, which means he could sign with any team he wants, basically for free, since he's still getting his payment from the Knicks. And if that happens, if Carmelo gets bought out, he can go to Houston for free, like I said, and then Houston can still try and move Ryan Anderson and go after a guy like Paul Millsap, which would give them a lineup of James Harden, Chris Paul, Carmelo Anthony, Paul Millsap, and Clint Capella, which in my eyes is better than lineup of Chris Paul, James Harden, Paul George, no power forward, and Clint Capella. Though they could still try and do both, you know, they could trade for Paul George and sign Carmelo Anthony if he's waived and play Carmelo Anthony at the 4, but I just don't see that as being as realistic. Also, I just want to say this is kind of off topic, but not really at the same time. To all the people out there saying that none of this matters, because even if they do get Carmelo Anthony or Paul George, they will just be reduced to wing, catch, and shoot type players. This was the main argument used by people that saying the Chris Paul thing wouldn't work, because under Mike D'Antoni's system, it's normally one ball handler, one playmaker, plus 4 shooters, meaning that either James Harden or Chris Paul would be reduced to being a catch and shoot type player for some plays, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. First off, like I said yesterday, you think Chris Paul would have asked to be traded to the Houston Rockets if he was going to become a catch and shoot type player? Answer that question honestly. If you answered yes, I need you to check yourself. Second off, Mike D'Antoni is not dumb. You think he'd honestly reduce Chris Paul or James Harden or any other players the Rockets get to catch and shoot type players. Mike D'Antoni is one of the best offensive coaches the NBA has ever seen. I'm not saying that I know exactly what the Houston Rockets offense will look like next year because I have no clue, but I can tell you this: Mike D'Antoni will figure out a way to utilize both Chris Paul and James Harden and whoever they get to the fullest of their potential, and their offense will be deadly because of that. But now it's time for the question of the day: Paul George or Carmelo Anthony? Who should the Rockets go after? Let me know down in the comment section below, but now let's take a look at what you guys said in yesterday's video. And yesterday, after Chris Paul was traded to the Rockets, I asked you guys how you felt about the trade, and here's what you said. Dumb move from the Rockets. They could have waited until July 1st. The Clippers did get a lot of return in this trade. I don't know how I feel about this move yet, but it's good for the Rockets. They freed up cap space. If the Rockets can get a good power forward, Millsap maybe, the Rockets will be a really fun team next year. For a trade involving an all-star like CP3, this was a very good trade for the Clippers considering he was leaving and they got a pretty good package for him. The reason they traded for Chris Paul instead of just waiting to sign him in free agency is because they couldn't afford to just straight up sign him in free agency. This way they got rid of a bunch of contracts and can still make more moves this summer too. And as for the Clippers, you know, it wasn't a terrible trade for them. Like I said, they got something for nothing. Even if none of those players are in their long-term plans, they can flip them for like more picks or something. So it is what it is. Like I said though, don't forget to leave your answers for today's question of the day down in the comment section below. But other than that, thank you once again for watching the video. Hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more daily NBA videos. And until tomorrow, keep getting them buckets, Team SDC, and I'm out of here.